Soon, winter will pass. Skin will continue. Since last time, there's been a patch whose notes mention many complaints that occurred during previous skin. Things like adjusting villager AI and stricter enforcement of animal limits. We'll see how those work out. Also, I noticed in the options there is a camera orbit mode rather than turning mode. Although this is also weird since you push in the direction that you want the camera to move. Whereas usually it's the direction you want, like, the land over there to move. Like, I would push right and expect that to mean that things will turn clockwise. But instead it means cameraman, slide this way. Gotta get a stage right. Close up on skin. Anyway, things here had been stable as we worked out a weird decentralized farming cube system that seems to be scaling up well. Enough to start dabbling in metal. To slowly encroach on valuable metal deposits. And the whole town has some wall, some protection. Oh, also in that patch, you can get to the defense panel off of any tower or gate. Bunch of little quality of life things, which is all quite good signs. Fine, healthy skin. Also more wolves. This was a feature added to the patch, that more wolves would happen. Specifically in the earlier ages. But perhaps everywhere else as well. Just more wolves. With each update, double the number of wolves. Alright, let's see if all 92 humans can be at work putting seeds in the ground. Also in that update, children are now allowed to do more chores. That should help with the workload in its perpetual state of being too high. There are now a larger list of jobs that are child compatible. Like this child, who just milked a cow on their own. Smart kid. A kid knows what's up. Kid's going places. So we're hanging out here in Copper, waiting to build up a bunch of knowledge to then cleanly break through into bronze and do all bronze things. We're also speaking of workload 125, doing alright there. So a bunch of knowledge thresholds for buildings were also adjusted. So that various, bigger, more expensive, fancy buildings would get their second knowledge payout sooner, so you don't have to build, like, 5 entire stone wheels. General result of making knowledge less scarce. And early building distributions less weird. And from the combat data acquired via the farm cube, we now have a nice general idea of how much supporting infrastructure should be around one hut. Such that anywhere we're planning to set up people to do things persistently, just a hut and some gardening and some miscellanea can just be nearby. Yep. This will hopefully serve as a bit of a bridge between the main settlement and the mine up on the hill here. Right, wells. That's the other thing to keep distributed all over the place. More drinking holes. Conduits of the dam. ideally, carts should just outright replace sleds. But of course, that means we need a supply of appropriate cart animal. For which also there's now a tangible stat difference between different hauling creatures. At some percent of full, the cart slows down. That threshold is higher for horse. Workload is too high. What's anyone gonna do about it? Yes, we did at the trailing end of last session have a successful year where harvest was complete and provided enough straw to last through the winter. That's all well and good. So knowledge to be had from another copper mine, a couple more pit furnace, and one more metalsmith. Which, one of them may as well live up here on the hill. Pit furnace made of pure mud. It's a highly versatile structure. Tar pit, also pure mud. Very robust technology. Right, I can also domesticate fruit at this point. Domestic tree, which are quite large. Source of fruit. Nut. Last the dawn of the nut age. Early human. Of tamed nut. Yes, a fruit. Highly perishable, but it is additional food that is available for low effort. Fruit in the summer, nuts in the fall. Berries also in the summer. Yeah, cherries are fruit. So where is a further copper that I could snap into? There's copper. And there's copper. As yet, unbroken copper. Look, if you stop and drink at our water, we get to steal your children. That's the rules. And we're forgoing goat. Sheep has a place here. Hog has a place here for now. Speaking of, how's that hog limiter? Supposed to be 10. Wait, so with 90 people, that's 45 of each work animal. With my target population of 100, yeah, 50 of each work animal that I'm permitting to have around. No, that's too perilous. I'm gonna let more creatures happen, but keep it finite for now, until we know. Until it's certain. Alright, looks like most of the grain got into the ground again. Good year. Good planting. I guess I should have more flax thread at this point as well. If we have enough demand for linen, then I need to find a place for another flax field. Town has encountered many bears over its age. This is mostly past the time of bears. Bears were the arch rivals of our ancestors. In these trying times, we know that man is the real bear. Start to clear out all the old bone gear. Well, yeah, bone and stone. Keep the sickles, just in case. Spend some clothing instead. Similarly, pulses don't last terribly long, but they are additional food in the mid-year. Okay, the other stables I ordered have not yet been built. That is why. Going up to 60 capacity. Alright, so I put one more pit furnace on the hill. Should have two more somewhere else. Probably closer to this other mine. The harvest is near. Well, the other harvest is also upon us, right this moment. The sub-harvest. Harvest Junior. No, I didn't queue up a drawing rack here, so toss that up. Keep them convenient to anywhere that meat could enter the system. Which, with livestock, is everywhere.
Manos.
100 humans. Unprecedented numbers of humans. Alright, the proving time. The true harvest. The full harvest. Glory to the workload. Seven dogs have plague. Out of 57 animals, we have only 9 dogs. The dog count remains unreasonable. Idle, huh? What if instead of idle, the harvest? Go do the harvest. Are you stuck? Are you trapped somehow? No, you're fine. Somewhere out there, the last 2 megaliths are ready to roll. As they say, the workload is too high. There's only one cure for high workload. It's doing work. It was alleged that the animal limits are being better enforced. It is said. Get some flax, though. So you were somewhere over there, and were low on morale. Decided you needed to do something to improve your morale. So you walked past this totem, and this skull pole, and these totems, to go to this skull pole. This specific pole. Well, 156, 7, 57 straw. So upon breaking through into Bronze Age, masonry is kind of the high priority thing. Masonry, composite archery. Yeah, I'd put both horse and brewing a little lower than that. Though brewing provides a source of morale other than worship. What would be a portable source of morale had our people invented the concept of transporting food and drink on their person. Would that we lived in more enlightened times. Such potent magics are beyond the reach of our people. So, remaining milestones. Circle, bronze, steel. Is anyone rolling those rocks? Anybody? They're out there, rigged and ready. Yes, somebody's on it. Jirak is on it. So are Amka and Karen. They got this. We have straw, though. The workload is too high. People just up and forget to feed animals for entire years. Oh yeah, this is another thing that I expect spirals out of control and becomes irreparable. Just, okay, how many logs are being burned every month to run the stoves in all of these huts? And how much woodland would we need to be constantly clear-cutting in order to fuel that, and then also have logs for use? Okay, let's go. Bronze time. Never again do we produce copper. This is now an all-bronze shop. Which means we need to go find tin, but, yeah, figure that out. It's right there, in the mountain. Hello, hostile humans. Yeah, there's the tin deposit that was up here. Snap into that. And then, let's see. Better fortifications is up here. Regular ass wall, though, can now be made of rocks. At last, the workload can be too high in exciting new ways. Seven raiders. Coming from over here. Bronzeward. So you have bows that you were using to assail these folks while you were in the tower. But now you're closing to melee. And of course, good to see that guard tower accomplished. Fuck all. Fine investment. I'll take 7 more. Oh god, the trader's here. How you doing? It's bandit season. Missed out on liquidating my stone tools at good rates. Now, well, we'll just use them till they break. It would be nice to set jobs. It would be nice to set jobs of any sort. Warrior or worker or farmer, and not strange, brain-dead generic work drone that vaguely hovers about, failing to identify any priority task. The workload's too high. Much about Dawn of Man remains weird. Still, the first patches containing what they did, it's a good sign. That's a fair omen. There's precedent. They're trying. Like, I'd like to build a large stone wall next to this pile of stone. In any other game of management, this would synergize pretty briskly. I could turn to my people and be like, ah, quarry, and then build. And we could have some helpful ants quickly darting back and forth, here and then here, and get work done. Sadly, these are primitive times. Such workloads are too high. Just keep dragging that stone. Also, right, I can start upgrading houses. For 3 thatch at a time, and some rocks. Also, these old storage huts. Time scale jank is pretty core to a lot of where things break down. Yeah, when it takes 2 weeks to eat a fish. An especially large fish being eaten by primitive means. I guess. Our eternal mantra. The workload is too high. Gonna tag all these stone piles. What could be done to afford an entire cow? Well, nah, don't worry about it. Bows are still reasonably valuable. Cycle a bunch of those out, get rid of that sling. Workload now 300%. Where I spoke one of the magic words for what would solve this. Q. When I take this entire fence and say upgrade it, it doesn't become a queue, it becomes a glob. It becomes a terror. There's not one mason job who wants to come over and start chipping away at the fence work a piece at a time. There's 2,000 fence upgrade jobs that everyone is looking at. Everyone's thinking about them. Second rock's nearly there. Yeah, why did you abandon the rock? Why'd you abandon the rock? Why can't I tell you to grab the rock? Okay, Tuora has the rock. There it goes. Takes time to move since it's larger than a usual rock. Yeah. Upgrade everything. There's a new age upon us. Every home is a mountain. Workload 10,000%, and now there's a food crisis. Now it's happening. I wanted a nicer fence, and now society will collapse. Bison attack. The circle returns as an omen of chaos. Vehicles exist, but there are people picking up entire logs and dragging them around, carrying them around by the shoulder, not even dragging them or rolling them. Not even tying them to some sort of idle mule and having it drag the log. Fall is half over. No grain is harvested. Everyone is going to die. Because high priority job doesn't mean takes priority over other jobs. The fact I tagged all those animals for hunting is actually contributing to this problem. Because hunting an animal involves spending 12 months chasing it into the wilderness, forgetting to butcher it on the spot, and then having someone else spend another 400 months going out and collecting one tiny square of its skin. Then 10,000 years later, someone returns to get the meat. Because it costs half your inventory to have a knife on your person at all times. Beyond human capacity to both employ both of your hands for a task and have knives in your possession. Such vast sorcery is beyond the comprehension of mere skin folk. Again, sorely missing infrastructure. I can't tell them to keep tools near the places where those tools are used. But even given their generic professionless behavior here in our Bronze Age anarchist commune of sorts, they could still be like, ah, grain time. Walk over to grain hut, get grain knife, and then go to grain. Instead of go to the opposite side of the planet to find a grain knife and then return to the field. Look at all of this grain that's about to die. Look at all of these people about to die. So why does every knife after the first one stop being a harvesting implement? If we're getting back into the apocalyptic mindset, as this is a civilization that is about to perish, to vanish into the dust and never be heard from again. In 6 seconds, all grain will explode, spontaneously vaporize, be taken into the night by evil spirits. Basic knife has 3 tasks. It can butcher, it can harvest, it can fight. Every other knife after that only has 2 uses. Why can't you cut grass with a knife? Fortifications are a trap. Well, throw the speed on. Time for everything to die. We have 22 hogs when I set a 15 hog limit. Time to have people starve to death when there is entire ham standing in front of them, which by law must be eaten. No, select the ham. Select the ham. There's people here, so they take priority over the ham. There's no context by which to say, is there a magic pixel where I can select the ham? There is the ham. Slaughter the ham. Which will now never happen, because that still requires one of our awful meat robots to divert time from its day to travel to distant lands to discover a knife and then return to pass it on to the next generation, so that one of them, after heading to the top of Skin Mountain to meditate for 40 years, can return having solved the riddle of pork and proceed to slay the ham. Slaughter all the ham. correcting AI issues would do a lot to improve things. But even without much better AI, or to put it another way, even if the AI were better, every action is still grossly overcosted in terms of time. That's the problem. Time needs to uncompress. All of these bars that need to be juggled are going too fast. Everything breaks down the moment you have more than a tiny group of skin huts. Things are also often capable of breaking down during the tiny skin hut era anyway. I have played some side games and watched Paleolithic society go into death spiral because someone chased a deer too far and froze and starved to death. When another important part of the old hunt and gather societies very far back in the times was that the various tech here that's necessary to survive, that the sharp rock, the skin house, the pile of sticks, are things that a single person can whip together in like a day, if they have to. A wandering hunter-gatherer can build a fresh campsite from scratch in new locations as they move around pursuing food. And that is integral to how they're able to operate. Any of these people could pack up most of what they need to build a personal skin house and just carry it with them as they go, and when they get tired, just set up your house and sleep, and then take down your house and move on. And yes, people are going to starve to death while we have a bunch of grain in storage that no one is going to grind. A bunch of flour no one's going to bake. All of these hogs that no one is slaughtering. Hey, you're hungry? You have an axe? Because, you know, there's no way that you could slay a hog with an axe. That's just not proper. Scythe? No. Get out. Impossible. You know, I would put right here that until this is changed, and until this is changed, the game will not be in a good state, because unless it is changed, people making this do not understand what they are trying to create. Knife is integral. Knife has its own inventory slot for knife only that everyone has. Everyone carries a knife. No one living in any of the societies that fall within this arc, and many of the societies that fall after it, would be without a knife. There is no task that ever crosses these people's paths where a knife would not be of help. Where a knife wouldn't be probably necessary even to proceed with what they're up to. And if not a knife, then there are many of these other tools that actually are just funny shaped knives. Specialty knives that have been bent or turned or are especially chunky. Knife is the fundamental tool. The cutting tool. When a thing must be split into multiple things. That is a foundational verb of technology. All knife-related tasks. Look at this person praying for salvation during the famine in front of a hog that someone is supposed to slaughter. Kill the hog. Kill the hog. Oh no, you have a bow and not a knife. A bow isn't a butchering tool, it's a hunting tool. You can't hunt a domestic animal. You don't chase it, it just lives here. Also, the fact that villagers can get into these states where your manual orders don't override whatever auto-task they've given themselves. Well, time for you to starve to death as you stare at a big rock. Well, you're too young to wield a knife, which is also something that should not be true. Since we're deciding to skip over children ever being like infants who are dependent entirely on their parents, when you can walk, you can use a knife. You can use a knife to be a help about the camp, slash village, slash city. A child would have a knife. A child would probably, as a rite of passage, make their first knife. In some way. A child would sharpen a rock and put it to use. And, like, a good metal knife could be handed down over generations and maintained if it were an especially good knife. This child might have received their dead grandparents' knife and instead used that knife. Spring is here. Time for everyone to continue dying while surrounded with ham. We have more knives than people. Everyone should have a knife to plunge into a ham at a moment's notice. None of the ham have been slaughtered. There are now more ham than there were when I ordered every ham to be slaughtered. I ordered too many walls to be built at once and everyone starved to death in what was previously an otherwise stable community. There's not enough stable space for our animals when all of our animals are overpopulated. When I ordered a culling of all of the animals 3 months ago and none of them have been stabbed by anyone. Is there no one in our society who's carrying a knife? You have a knife, and you're going to get a log instead of doing any knife jobs. Alright, that part of the problem. I need to butcher an animal. That's going to involve moving 6 objects. Better go get a sled. Better go venture beyond the farthest valleys. Chasing the sun until the sense of self has slothed off of the body, leaving only purity of will. Then find a sled, then turn around and come home, and have starved to death before you could slay a ham. A ham that's already in the village and doesn't need to go anywhere. It's right here. You know what? Since killing the animal and actually butchering the animal are 2 separate jobs for some further dumbass reason, which, you know, is another step that causes villagers to fail to save themselves from starvation when there's a hog right there. Why do they need a butchering tool to kill the animal when anything could kill the animal if it's someone else's job to actually carve it open and separate the meats and clean the skin and debone it? You could just bash it with a rock. You could take a nice heavy cane, which you probably have if you tend animals, and just bash them with it. Where did that butcher go? Did they successfully kill whichever hog I pointed them at? Some hog has managed to die. The hog count is down, slightly. All these other hog remain unslain. Alright, so while we're watching the death spiral continue here as well, so further problem, further just outright bad, why would you implement this that way, it's terrible. The process for upgrading a building is tear down the old building, gather materials for upgraded form of building, construct fresh building. Not gather materials for upgraded building, upgrade the building. Also, with no regard for... There's overlap between what the old building was made of and what the new building is made of. A bunch of thatch and logs are already here, waiting to be recycled into the new building. So upgrades are also a trap. Since furthermore, this process begins without any mechanisms to make sure that your supply is going to be accounted for. You should actually never upgrade a building, I guess. Only ever construct new buildings. I'll also draw attention back to the very important missing link here of dirt wall. The foundational wall, the ancestor of all architecture. Ditch and mound. The thing that henge actually means. Sort of. Versus Stonehenge. The stone part is the stones. Those aren't the henges. The henge is that around the Stonehenge there is a ditch and mound. Which is weird in that the ditch is on the inside and the mound is on the outside. Suggesting that it isn't the base of a defensive wall, otherwise you do it the other way around to increase the effective height of the wall. So instead it's like, I don't know, maybe people sat on it to observe the rocks during whatever ceremonies may have happened at Rockwheel. Such are the mysteries. The workload is too high. Ah, 100 wall. Good milestone. Time for everyone to die. Walls are useless. Also, yeah, look how long a stone wall held out against sticks. And swords. Fortifications, that thing that completely reshapes the field of combat. Don't have walls, don't have gates, don't have towers. All of those are worthless. The defense tab is a trap. Have only grain. Population capacity is now 4. Because every hut has been torn down before any hut has been reconstructed. Of course, because disassembling a hut requires no tools, and no materials, and no vehicles. So anyone can do that at any time. So upgrading your buildings en masse is yet another way to tell your village to commit suicide. Instead of being the thing you would obviously do after breaking through into a new form of architecture. That's in every way more efficient than what you were using before. 100 charcoal. Time for all the livestock to die. The raw number of livestock means most of them survive the winter anyway. The volumes of material that the trader brings become useless almost immediately. Traders fail to scale up at all. Yes, and now unless I go out and delete a bunch of these fields, then these are also going to contribute to the death of the people. There's too much farm And that's why people will starve. Because they're going to spend all their time planting in too much dirt. All the other jobs that exist on the field right now, when you go to fill the charcoal pit for a burning, workload 890, workload 1000, workload 1,000,000. We're out of rocks, naturally. All the rocks went into the trash wall. Because rocks are a scarce resource. Here in the Rock Age. The post-Rock Age. Yeah. Yeah. The patches fix nothing of consequence. This is just bad right now. The workload doesn't work.